Afternoon everybody, I hope you are all well. This is a short video today and it follows the theme for the term where we've been looking at this idea of guiding as part of our teaching and learning framework. You may remember a couple of months ago now I picked up that idea of dual coding and how we could support pupils' understanding of content by the way in which it was presented, and then Emma more recently did some stuff around instruction and the way that we deliver specific tasks and requests for pupils to do and how that can impact their understanding of a task. What we want to do today is pick something that is explicitly part of the guiding framework, but it's not something that you can see here already on the board. But it is something that you will be able to see all of these things if it's done well. And it's revisiting something that we've always done, but perhaps we always haven't done it as effectively as we could. And so that's this idea of books. So take a look at this quote here. Now, I can't believe there will be many of us out here, having read that would take issue with it. The more I read it, the more obvious it seems, and the more surprised I am that we haven't done and pushed towards this more already. We know books are important. We know they're incredibly important in terms of preparing pupils for assessments, which we value highly here. We also know that more so now than ever before, books will help create or form the judgment that external visitors, and we're talking about Ofsted here, might make about the quality of teaching in our schools. Perhaps 10 years ago, you could have justified some pretty poor books if the quality of the teaching that they saw was very, very good. And I don't think that's the case now. And so we've got to get books right. And I think we need to completely reimagine what it is that we are doing in order to do that. You know, we've tried different things in the past. If you've been here a while, you'll remember book scrutinies, you'll remember book looks. If you've been here for a couple of years, you might even remember on Sims, we had these things called book standards. We've tried to impose upon everybody a consistency of approach in terms of presentation. And you know, we've tried with the best intention, lots of different things. Could all of us confidently say that we are absolutely happy with the quality of the books that we've got at the moment in our subjects? Perhaps not across as many subjects as we would like. If we're going to address it, if we're going to make continued improvements in the subjects where it probably is okay, then I think we need to reimagine what we mean by looking at books, and we're going to do that through this idea of book study. So, whilst the idea is at its heart fairly simple, book study, talking to kids about their books, it's also important we get it right. And I think an analogy here can sort of help explain the value of that. Hopefully you'll all be familiar with the story of Rumpelstiltskin. And so this is referred to as the Rumpelstiltskin effect in psychology. If you don't know the story, at its heart, it's about a young person who offers to turn straw into gold for a young lady. But after doing that for 2 nights, on the 3rd night, he says that if I do this again for you, I would like your firstborn child. And so she does that and she agrees to it, not considering her future. Years later, after she marries the king, she gives birth to a handsome baby boy, and Rumpelstiltskin turns up to claim his dues. She begs and pleads with him so much and so passionately that he offers her one last chance and says, if you can name or provide my name, then I shall let you off in 3 attempts. And after 2 failed attempts, she miraculously guesses Rumpelstiltskin and he disappears, leaving her with a baby. And what I like about this is a very long-winded analogy, I appreciate that, is that this idea, as soon as we name something, then we take the power away from it. And we take the issue of the complexity of something away. As soon as the lady in Rumpelstiltskin goes through this task, then she is free of all the issues that therefore come with. So let's keep things simple and approach book study with the same approach that we have to teaching and learning. And so hopefully this image that you can see on your screen here strikes a chord. Much of it comes directly from the Teaching and Learning Framework. We've omitted questioning because often lots of that won't be recorded in our books and tracked, and the same with RUA. But we've swapped them out for curriculum and feedback, which are very specific to what we might expect to be able to see in pupils' books. So when we are talking about book study and when we are talking to kids, these are the 6 distinct areas that we are trying to explore. How do we do that? Nice and easy. We need to take a look at the book. We might want to do that slightly in advance of asking the kids. It doesn't need to be a big distance, but you are going to want to try and see what you can pick out from a book. And there's some fantastic examples coming in a second from Liz. And then you're going to have a detailed conversation with the pupils. Why? Well, as much as anything else, it gives us a really good indication of how well we are doing with teachers. This could be something that you do with your own class. It will certainly be something that we'll encourage departments to do next year across the department. It's a really effective way of evaluating the delivery of a topic, where that topic fit, what came before, how well the pupils did, and how that is presented to anybody else that might want to come in and take a look. So book study, I think, potentially has the power to change the way we teach. And so to address the problem that we have with books, we change our teaching. We don't get directly confused and think about presentation and PowerPoints, because truth is we've tried that and that doesn't address the heart of the problem.
So I wanted to see how pupil book study could work in English to help us understand how far the knowledge that's delivered as part of the English curriculum is embedded in lessons and how much students have learnt. So I started by selecting a Year 7 class and a piece of work to focus on to assess student knowledge and understanding over time and how the curriculum has been embedded into lessons and how much students have learned. It's important to start with to pick a piece of work that represents the culmination of a lesson sequence and the different strands of knowledge and skills that have been delivered over a series of lessons. So this was a lesson in Year 7 where students had written a letter to Boris Johnson asking for puppy farms to be abolished, and it was part of a wider topic where students had been studying the novel Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. So I wanted initially to understand whether students understood the purpose of the task and where it fitted into their prior learning, and this would help me understand how successfully the knowledge had been embedded, and that key of understanding that pupils understand why they're completing work and how it links to other aspects of their knowledge. So I started with a really simple first question: can you tell me about this piece of work? And both the students I interviewed were able to tell me what the task was, that they had to write a letter asking for puppy farms to be abolished. And I wanted then to unpack that a little bit more and to ask where this fitted into the wider topic they'd been studying. And I was really pleased that both students were able to link the task to their study of Oliver Twist, and they were able to tell me that it linked to their recent work on Bill Sykes' cruelty to his dog. And this was really important because it showed me that students could retrieve knowledge from previous lessons and were linking aspects of the topic together to build a schema, which was one of the objectives of the curriculum design that we've looked at in English, where we've interleaved non-fiction writing with the study of texts to encourage students to make those links. That was particularly key because that's something that wouldn't have been apparent from a standard lesson observation or from a traditional book look, where you know, for example, a head of department would look at a book in isolation without the student. You would never know that without interviewing the student alongside their work. I wanted to explore that in further depth, so I asked students what they knew they had to include to make this a successful piece of work. So students were able to give some examples of things they had to include. So they talked about setting it out as a letter with an address. They talked about having to include their personal thoughts and including 3 different arguments against puppy farms. And they were able to connect these features to prior learning, so it was really encouraging that they were able to link them to previous topics and to the work that they'd done in primary school. So, as I said, the answer to question 4 was really encouraging, that students were able to connect to prior learning and to demonstrate that through practice. And then finally, in terms of areas for development, that really came out in the kind of the language aspect of the task. So I wanted to check if the explicit vocabulary that had formed part of the lesson sequences had been embedded and retained. So the design of that is that students are using that vocabulary in an extended writing task that they've been explicitly taught through lessons. And obviously the way we teach it, if you think back to the first CPD that Emma did, where she talked about explicit vocabulary instruction, so they are the methods that we use used to instruct in vocabulary. So I asked the students if they had to include any particular words in this piece of writing. So the words that they did need to include in this piece of writing were perpetrators, inadequate and obligatory, that are all taught as part of the prior lesson sequence. This wasn't clear to the students and they hadn't included them, all of them in the writing, and those that they had included they weren't able to identify. So this just meant that this was an area for development, and another area was the key skills that form part of this sequence of lessons, one of which was how to write something called a GSA introduction, which is just a specific type of introduction that we teach students to use in non-fiction writing in English. So in terms of me taking away from that, that would then follow into feedback to a class teacher or to a department, and a focus on more explicit embedding of these skills and vocabulary. So that could involve encouraging teachers to use tasks where students are reflecting on their work through more self-assessment, highlighting key vocabulary that they've used and recalling it through self-assessment tasks, so that they're more able to articulate that when they're looking back and reflecting on their work. But overall, the process was incredibly useful. The information I got could only have been attained through interviewing the students with their books, and not through looking at the books in isolation or through standing at the back of a classroom just watching one isolated lesson. So overall, it was incredibly useful, and it helped me to identify some areas for development to continuously improve in Key Stage 3 English.
So what do we want you to do? Go away, watch this again. If you need to see it or refer to it later, it will be up on our school YouTube channel. And then over the remainder of this half term, what I'd like you to do is go and try it out. Pop into somebody else along your department and take a few kids out, look at their books, speak to them, ask them. See how easy a process this is. The questions are the important bit, and hopefully the example Liz has just given us there shows how powerful they can be if we get them right. But they're not set in stone. What we do want to do is try and pull out these 6 distinct areas from the framework, but what we exactly ask will vary according to you. What I'd like you to do is go, try, and then I'm sending out a Microsoft form this afternoon, and if you come up with some questions that work for you and are effective, then share them with us. What we'd like to do is share in September, not a whole school sort of policy as it were, but a guidebook, a how-to, a help assistance book, so that we can all raise the quality of our questions, because I think that's the difference between doing book study well or doing it poorly. It will be our skill in extracting the information from the kids and understanding their responses as much as that as well. So any suggestions, any feedback, send that through to me, please. But do find time over the next few weeks, go and look at some books and have those conversations with pupils.